English by the Nature Method, Chapter 54, the 54th chapter, Railways. Really, Marshall, Storm said, when they were discussing their trip to Brighton over a quiet cup of tea on Sunday night. I must say a few words in praise of your railways. Not only was our train extremely comfortable, but I was surprised to find how fast it went. The journey home from Brighton was very quick indeed. Yes, we are rather proud of our railways. Most people who come to Britain from the continent have nothing but praise for our trains. The reason why our railways are better than those of most other countries many think is this. In most countries, the railways have always been owned by the state, but over here they were under the control of four big private companies until the 1st of January 1948. Where the state owns the railways, there is no competition, and that often means they say that nobody takes any real trouble to make a first-class business out of them. This usually means, of course, that railways owned by the state don't make money, but lose money instead. Although our railways are now owned by the state, you must remember that they had been made into a first-class business by the people who owned them before. Storm, yes, I can easily understand that there must have been much competition between the four companies, and I also understand that this may have been a benefit to the people who used the trains. Each of the companies, of course, wanted to get as much of the transport as possible. Their accounts had to show profit at the end of the year. If they lost business, they lost money, and if they lost too much money, their accounts would show a loss instead of a profit. Then people wouldn't put their money into that company, and it would soon be finished. But tell me, what could they really do in the way of competition? It isn't always that competition is good. Oh, there were, and still are, of course, many forms of service to be found in our trains. We really feel that somebody is always thinking out new comforts for the travellers. In almost all carriages, we have soft seats to sit on, instead of hard seats of wood. At many stations we can buy a cup of tea, take it along in the train, and leave the empty cup at another station. In one or two trains running between London and Brighton, they have special carriages with typewriters for businessmen and their secretaries. I see that your railways differ very much from those in my country, Storm said. At home, there is, for instance, a great difference between first and third-class carriages. The first-class carriages, of course, have soft seats, but many third-class carriages still have hard wooden seats and typewriters. I'm sure nobody ever thought of having typewriters for businessmen in our trains. There is another difference which I'm almost sure you have noticed, Marshall said. Our carriages are a little narrower than those used on the continent, although the space between the rails isn't narrower. With narrower carriages running on the rails, it means that trains can go much faster. You will remember that we Englishmen built the first railways. That is to say, already more than 2,000 years ago the Romans knew how to use rails of stone or wood for the transport of heavy objects. But it was in England that the first modern railway was opened, with a real engine that was moved forward by steam. This is an engine. At first, people were afraid of these engines with steam coming out of them. This is steam. They thought that the engines weren't safe and dared not ride in trains pulled by engines. So not until the engines had been used for some time for the transport of goods did people believe that they were quite safe and that they could ride in the trains without danger. I think it would be hard today to find a person who wouldn't dare to ride in a train. How strange to think that the railways, which have been of such benefit to people, were so long in having success, Storm said. Just think how travelling a little over 100 years ago differed from travelling today. A 2 hours trip today would have been a 2 days journey then. A very uncomfortable journey too, and not very safe. Nowadays, we sit at ease on seats as comfortable as our chairs at home. If we get hungry on the trip, we only have to go into the restaurant car and order what we want, and then sit at ease in soft chairs, watching houses and trees fly past the window, while we are waiting for the food. Yes, replied Marshall. The railways soon became a success, even if the first trains were comfortable and the service now given to passengers was quite unknown. The speed of those trains in comparison with what people were used to, must have given the first passengers a feeling that they were flying along as fast as birds. Speaking of birds and flying, it is said that some of our trains, for instance, the Cheltenham Flyer and the Flying Scotsman, two of the fastest trains in the world, when at their greatest speed, really do go faster than any bird has ever flown. I don't know whether it's true, though. I hardly think so, but even without that, there are so many things that I must praise, Storm answered. I've noticed, for instance, that there are very fine connections between most of the larger towns. There are connections several times a day from one end of the country to the other, and the connections from London are so frequent that you can go almost anywhere whenever you want to. I'm sorry to say that in my country this is not always so. Perhaps that's why many Londoners are such frequent guests in the country. It's made easy for them to get away, Marshall replied. You seem to be made of the right material for a true Londoner. I've noticed that it's getting harder and harder to keep you at home during the weekends. You go about in trains as if you were getting material together for a book about the country round London. Or perhaps you just want to be sure that the railways will get a nice profit. Don't be foolish, Marshall, Storm replied. I'm sorry I haven't told you any more about my trips than I have, but I will tell you all about them later on. This sounds very interesting. And what has come over you since you suddenly look so serious? Have you lost all your smiles in the train? Please don't make fun of me. I'm really a rather serious young man at heart. So I see. Excuse me, old man, but I'm sure that yours is not only a case of the loss of a few smiles. I wonder if you haven't lost your heart as well. Storm, what do you mean? Marshall replied. No, I shall answer you with another question. Are you alone on your frequent Sunday trips into the country? I'm not quite ready to tell you about that yet. Oh, sorry, I can wait.